Hello again. So today I'm going to carry on talking about the puja. The last 2 days I've said a little bit about why we do puja and what it is, and I talked a little bit about the first two verses, the first two stages of the spiritual path, which was about knowing why we worship, seeing the significance of the Buddha and what the Buddha achieved. I don't think I said much about humility, which is a quality that if we're going to lead a spiritual life, I think we have to understand quite deeply about humility, about going beyond our pride, our wanting to be right, our, for shorthand we'll say our ego, although I think there's problems with the word ego. We can see it as something that's got to be got rid of. We can see it as something rather than as the process that it is. Anyway, I wanted to start with a quote that Sangharakshita has in a book called Ritual and Devotion in Buddhism, and I'd really recommend that book. It's a very good book, primarily on the Sevenfold puja. So this is a quote from Erich Fromm, who was a psychologist, a therapist, and he distinguished between rational ritual and irrational ritual. And about rational ritual, he said that it's shared action, expressive of common strivings, rooted in common values. Shared action, expressive of common strivings, rooted in common values. I think that's a very good explanation of ritual. So, yes, it is shared. I said that yesterday. We do it with other people that have similar aims, and I'm not going to use the word beliefs because, in a way, I see Buddhism as much more exploratory than that. You're not asked to believe something specific. You're asked by the Buddha to try his methods and see what arises. So, as I often say, if you commit yourself to practice meditation for, say, 6 months, even just 6 months, and you do the practices every day, mindfulness of breathing and metta bhavana, if you don't feel that there's some benefit at the end of that time, then I would suggest you go and do something else. So, we don't want to waste our life, but the important thing is to do it every day, because that's the only way we're going to find out if it really changes us, if it really is as dramatic, as dynamic as I'm saying it is. So, coming back to the puja, we're now to the third verse, and the third verse is Going for Refuge. And this is, it's quite a strange term, really. Refuge sounds like we are running away from something. And that can put people off. Going for refuge, it sounds like we're copping out of life or something, going and hiding ourselves away because we can't bear it all. And that's a very misunderstood interpretation. So, going for refuge, well, of course, the important thing is what we're going for refuge to, and we're going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. It's good to remind ourselves of that. Even now, I remind myself of that, particularly when we recite the 5 precepts, which we do at the end of the verse. So we chant together the Going for Refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And the way that I remind myself, in particular, is that in Pali or Sanskrit, what we're saying is, I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dharma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. But then very significantly, we say it again, only for the second time, I go for refuge to the Buddha, for the second time, and then again for the third time. And that repetition reminds me that we keep having to do it. We have to keep doing it, because if not, we slide away. So the first verse, this verse of Going for Refuge section says, "This very day I go for refuge. This very day I go for refuge." And that's very important, that we're doing it now. There's not going to be some better time in the future when we've got more time, when we've retired or whatever. It's going to be now. If we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. And this refuge, well, actually, to be honest, we are running away from something. We are choosing an alternative way of life. We're choosing to turn away from samsara and turn away from our negative mental states. We're choosing to turn away from a lazy way of life. We're turning towards aliveness, awakeness. We're turning towards the Dharma. That will change our life. So it's a massive thing to do. It's not like we're just adding it on to our life. It's not that we're making a few adjustments. The whole orientation of our life is changing in accordance with the Dharma. In other words, we're devoting ourselves to find out, to go more deeply into our practice, to meditate more deeply, to practice the precepts more deeply, and to penetrate reality. There's no short way around saying that, really. And that is not easy to do, because we are drawn towards an easy life. So, as Sangharakshita has said at some point, there's no standing still. We'll just regress unless we make an effort. And that's because of this gravitational pull for us to want an easy life. It's actually, I think we can really see that, when we're slightly tired, it's the end of the day, and maybe we sit down and watch something. Maybe we've wanted to watch it, and maybe the program ends and we just stay on sitting there. Oh, I wonder what's coming next. In a way, that's a very good example of our laziness. How we don't, we give in, if you like, rather than be creative some of the time. So we're going for refuge by declaring that we are orienting our lives in a new way, in a way that's quite radical, that's not going to be easy, that's going to demand our energy, but we want to do that. So when we say that verse, this very day I go for refuge to the powerful protectors whose purpose is to guard the universe, the mighty conquerors who have overcome suffering everywhere. So it's not that these conquerors, these jinnahs, are gods, but they have showed the way. That's the important thing. They've done it. And they've released themselves from all suffering by going for refuge. So they're powerful. They're powerful in what they show us. If you like, they've got the mental and the heart swords and weapons that we need. And, it is a very dramatic thing to be determined to turn our energy towards overcoming our negative mental states. And it's a very joyful thing, and we're sharing that with others in the puja. It's fantastic if you've got a lot of people together. So like on an order convention, I've experienced, 400 or 500 people engaged in a ritual together, and hearing all those voices that are determined to not just practice the Dharma, but spread the Dharma, but give the Dharma to other people to show what the Dharma is capable. is a very amazing and magical thing. And in that context, the bodhicitta, the will to enlightenment, arises. What better place to leave it than there for today? See you tomorrow.